Welcome to Fluxedo Junction. I'm Scott Kukler. Each episode we bring you the best music of all genres from throughout the world, and this week we'll be speaking with singer, guitarist, producer, and engineer Paul Schmitz. As a member of the Long Island-based Americana group The Last Hombres, Paul worked extensively with the legendary Levon Helm of the band, as well as Buddy Cage of New Riders of the Purple Sage. The Hombres, featuring Paul along with Michael Meehan on bass and vocals, Russ Seeger on guitar, vocals, and violin, Buddy Cage on pedal steel, Kathy Krieger on vocals, and Levon Helm on drums, signed to Koch Records in 2003, releasing their album Redemption to critical acclaim from publications such as Pulse magazine, while also enjoying Americana airplay all over the country. In 2014, their follow-up album Oddfellows Rest was released with Chris James on keyboards and pedal steel, and Tom Ryan on drums. We're going to start things off tonight with a track from Redemption. Here's The Last Hombres with King of Memphis, here on Fluxedo Junction.
Well, this all started with the cold iron gun. The very last dollar that was put on the mark. The stones that covered the dead man's eyes, falling from the heaven on the day he died. I'm the king of Memphis, dreaming down every one of y'all streets. I'm the king of Memphis, I've dreamed every one of y'all dreams. If you stand too close to the river at night, off in the distance hear a mournful cry, with the lights of the city shining on your back. You leave something there that you'll never get back. I'm the king of Memphis, dreaming down every one of y'all streets. I'm the king of Memphis, I've dreamed every one of y'all dreams. Well, the captain needs to rest his rum-soaked bones, so he left them lying there by the side of the road. Deeper in a hollow, the further your regrets. Well, you haven't met the king, so you ain't there yet. I'm the king of Memphis, dreaming down every one of your streets. I'm the king of Memphis, I've dreamed every one of your dreams. I'm the king of Memphis, dreaming down every one of your streets. I'm the king of Memphis, I've dreamed every one of your dreams.
Yeah, I just want to start out with kind of explaining, I guess, to my audience the relationship we have, which is I used to work for and run a division of a record label that allowed me to sign your band, The Last Hombres, to that label. And that project coincided with me then leaving the label, like kind of right in the middle of the project. But the story goes even back a little bit further. My good friend, Will Angeloro, who's a producer and a musician in his own right, at the time was on Long Island, and I guess he had heard about you guys. And, you know, we already obviously knew about Russ Seeger, we knew about Buddy Cage, But when he called me that day, he knew I had the limited ability to sign projects, and he said, "There's some Long Island guys who hooked up with Levon Helm. You should sign them." And I think we ended up speaking later that same day. And so I had the privilege of meeting you through that experience, and then we've remained in touch over the years, and you've been involved in a ton of other things as well. But what are your recollections of that period?
If you think about it, like how often does the guy that signed you to a record label do you remain friends 20 years later?
Oh, yeah.
We've been friends this whole time, and you know, the quick story of the whole thing with Levon and where we were just a Long Island bar band, you know, and we wrote our own material, and nobody came to see us play. It was, you know, for years. And we had Russ Seeger, who you know, and you know his reputation as a guitar slinger. It's just a killer guitar player. So we kind of had it, you know, he was writing, and Mike was writing, and I was writing. And we were like, we wanted to do another record. We had done one record that just failed miserably, so we wanted to do another record. And we didn't have a drummer. We had gotten through our last drummer, and I heard Levon was playing with Buddy Cage in the city. So I called Buddy, and I was like, he's like, yeah, Levon wants to work. So I'm like, all right. So I went into the city. I met him. He's like, here's my number. Give me a call. I called him the next day, and he's like, yeah, I'm in. He wanted to play, so he wanted to record. So we recorded, I think June 16th of 2001 is when we recorded 2 days with Levon. We had him for 3 days, but we ran through, we ended up with like 17 tracks, and I think we put out 12. So we still have extra tracks with him on it that we actually baked the tapes, and we're going to go back and listen to this stuff, and there were stuff that didn't make the record that we might go finish.
Oh, wow.
We don't know. Well, we're looking at stuff like that. But, yeah, it was you know, so once we recorded that record, kind of what happened was I had my first Telecaster that I owned. I was selling it. I don't know why, but I was off of it, and it was a 68 Tele. And I sold it on eBay. Guy's like, yeah, I bought your guitar. I want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. So he calls me, and I'm like, I know your voice. And he's like, yeah, I'm on the radio. I'm like, you're Mark Coppola, the Cope.
The
He's
Cope.
Like,
yeah.
Q104. I nailed it. I was like, so I'm like, listen. And I told him what I was doing with Levon, and he's like, you know, bring the guitar into the city. I want to meet you anyway. So I went into the city and hung out with him for an afternoon. Gave him his guitar, and he's like, when you get your record, send it to me at Q104. I said, okay. So I did, and he calls me up after, this is 6 months later, and he calls me up, and he's like, you're going on the air on Sunday Night Jonathan Clark's show.
Oh, man, great show.
The next day, you called me. And offered us a record deal. I was like, yeah, that sounds great to me.
So my friend Will must have heard you guys on the radio that night and called, because that was a Sunday night show, and he would have probably called me first thing Monday morning and said, sign this.
You called me Monday afternoon.
Yeah, and it got done very quickly, and, you know, the terms of the deal were horrible, and you guys...
Yeah, we didn't look at it that... We looked at it like nobody was going to give us any kind of a break. You know what I mean? Like we had, I thought, a good record with, you know, well-written tunes and well-recorded. I mean, we did it at Pie Studio in Glen Cove with Perry Margolis' place.
Yeah.
I think he's out in L.A. now. But, I mean, you can't get better gear than that. You know, just like top shelf. You know, once we got Levon, I was like, okay, well, now we got to go to a real studio. You know, we can't, you know, so that's what we ended up doing. And we were kind of shocked. I was completely shocked that anybody would offer us a deal. So we didn't care about the terms at all, to be honest with you.
Well,
I didn't even look at it. Probably, I think I read the contract. I remember telling you, if it's more than 3 pages long and I can't read it, then I won't sign it. And you were like, okay. And it was 3 pages long, and it was like you know.
I forgot about that, actually.
Dummies, you know. So I was like, yeah, this is good. I was really thrilled with it, and I was really, you know, dude, we were like, you know, we're in our mid-40s, you know, we're older guys, and all of a sudden we're, you know, on the radio all the time, and, you know, it kind of took off for a little while. It was a lot of fun, man.
You know, if you really think about it, if you and I both step back from the experience as participants and just look at the story on paper, it actually is a very speeded up version of the way that bands used to get signed back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but it was sped up into a period of like it all happened in a couple of days. But basically, you did literally get discovered through appearing on a local radio. I mean, it was New York radio, but it was their independent
which was
a huge station.
They're still there.
Yeah, they're a huge station, but his Sunday night show was like a Nietzsche kind of a show. You know, like he could play independent art. It was a great program. Out of the Box. I remember that show.
Yep. With Jonathan Clark.
Yeah. See, at that time, I was fortunate enough to already have had limited working experience with other cool classic rock people, you know, and so I'm sure I went into it thinking, wow, Levon, I'd love the chance to even just meet the guy, and also I did try to do whatever I could at the time for Long Island bands. I was never able to really sign any, but whatever I could do. I wrote for some magazines, and I just liked to try and give a little bit of something back, because it wasn't all that far removed from when I was a musician. I just remember how much it sucked trying to get signed. But you guys stood out, and there's always been a tradition of guys like you and the other Hombres on Long Island, even going to people like Michael Falzerano with New Riders of Purple Sage, Kerry Kearney. You know, there's like always been a great roots rock scene here. Yeah,
I mean, there's this like and a great like original, authentic, you know, playing really authentic original music. And it's hard to get through, like Long Island, you know, was always known as like cover band land, and, you know, you didn't get gigs in the bars if you didn't play all covers. And I just refused, you know, I did that when I was a kid, you know, and fought my way through the bars of Long Island, and I was like, you know what, I want to write songs, and I know nobody's going to care. So that's all I did, and I booked gigs, and you know, nobody would show up, but I just was not going to go back to doing covers and being, you know, in a tribute band or something like that. I was just like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I knew I was going to be, you know, nobody was going to pay any attention to me. And so this is like, I'm in my 20s when I decide that. And so it was 20 years later from that I get signed. So I'm like, you know, I stuck to my guns. I did what I wanted to do. And, you know, I'm not very successful at it, but you know, my integrity is still in place. And now when I go out, I love playing cover songs. I love it.
Yeah.
I love picking out like old Commander Cody stuff and you know, old Tom Waits stuff, you know, just cool stuff. So it's like there's no pressure on me at all. I'm back out now. You know what happened with me with the train wreck.
Yeah. I know you can't really talk too much about that, but
yeah, I was laid up for the last 7 years. I had multiple surgeries on my spine to try to get me back in. But now I'm like well enough to go play shows again, which I didn't think I was going to be able. Even 3 years ago, I was like, "There's no way I'm ever getting back out again." It was kind of over to me. So now it's like, you know, there's a club up the street from me that kind of adopted me, and I can, you know, I help them with the music and booking music. It's called U.S. Brews. It's on Milldam Road in Centerport, which is, you know, Centerport's like this tiny little nothing strip of stores. Very nice place, but it's, you know, it's small. And this guy Brian he's got the same idea that I do. He wants original music. He wants like jazz. He wants, you know, he just wants all kinds of different stuff, you know. So it's great to be involved, and that pulled me out of like, you know, my isolation and being, you know, locked down for all those years.
Well,
you know, get me back into life, and so I'm playing shows. We're playing December 30th. Me and Mike are doing an Hombre thing.
Yeah, that's
we'll
excellent.
Play like half Hombre stuff and half covers, and have fun.
I was born in a Texas border town. Maybe someday they'll come and find me, and I can leave this life behind me. I hope their shining lights will blind me. To Reno with some girl. She thought that I would take her around the world. Well, I just took her and I left her to be found by the arms of an angel with her head bowed down. Maybe someday they'll come and find me, and I can leave this life behind me. I hope their shining lights will blind me.
Music heals, man. Music heals, or at least it's part of the process. So that's awesome.
And people heal. You go out and you're with people and you see all your old friends. It's just like, I mean, I know everybody with COVID was isolated, and I went through that times 1,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody was locked home. I don't know how long people stayed home for. But I was home for 7 years. And you know, so to go out and to be with people and play music again, it's all things that I didn't think would happen again, to be honest with you. So I'm thrilled, man. I'm just, you know, we're getting together. We're getting ready to, we're going to do another record, you know, and just put it out, and we don't care.
That's fantastic, like, who cares? You know, it was such a pleasure working with you guys, and the chemistry that you had. Look, and I have known you so long now that it went beyond working for the label, and then I went and saw you guys when you were working, I guess, your third record, and that was with, obviously, a different drummer. Levon was gone by then, and it was at a great venue, the Bolton Center, and I loved that show, and my wife loved it too, man. We had such a great time, and that album, we still listen to that. That's in regular rotation in our house.
I think we did a good record then, too. It was, you know, I had done a solo record between those two records, and nobody even listened to that ever. So this one, we kind of like got back out there, and we signed another deal with a label down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans, and you know, we did some tours and stuff. And you know, at my age, it's like, you know, I don't want to be doing that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I hear you. It wears on you.
Get a church band all over the world to play music. I'm way past that.
Gypsy woman in purple and red, dance in a circle, tea leaves red, milk from the honey, what they said, fight from the serpent, they all played dead. Oh baby, don't pokes on the arm and beats on the drum. Shifting low, how far can we go? Comes out the other side, fire and glow. Oh baby, don't you dream no more. Oh baby, I'm rolling low. Oh baby, don't you dream no more. Morning has come and we got to go. Switch lifting, tubes in the air, smell of the whiskey on the pine floor stand. Turn on the bright lights and pull up the shades. Strike up the band, boots to the stage. Tell everybody the talk of the town. This is the last time the band comes round. Oh baby, don't you dream no more. Oh baby, I'm rolling low. Oh baby, don't you dream no more. The morning has come and we got to go. Oh baby, don't you dream no more. Oh baby, I'm rolling low. Oh baby, don't you dream no more. Morning has come and we got to go.
You know, I always
So
remember.
I've got a place up the street that I can go to, and it's the same thing. I go play music. You know?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm down to.
I
Where I was set out to do in the first place. What happened to me was, you know this as a musician, not many musicians do business. And if they do business, they're not really doing it correctly or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not the best business guys in the world. So when I got into it, by default, I was handed business ends of it, and I ended up doing 95% business and 5% music.
Right.
And it gets to be like, God, this is not what I signed up for, you know. So when that would all fall apart and I could get back to playing music, I was happy again. You know, so it's you know, the pressures of trying to do something that's like you're way past your age that you should be, you know. Music is for like a 20-year-old guy, and 20-year-old guys jumping in vans. And we did this. You know, I did this when I was 20. I drive all over the place and play shows. I mean, that's what you do when you're 20. When you're my age, not so much, you know. At least that's the way I am.
I remember having almost an identical conversation with. I'd gotten very friendly with Pat Denizio of the Smithereens, and I went on to a couple of, you know, shows in different parts of the country with them. And I just remember hanging out with Pat once in his hotel room, and I was saying, you know, this is really is, and it was, I think we were in Chicago. It was like 3 days before Christmas. It was freezing cold. Nobody really wanted to be there. The show was great, but, you know, everybody in the band was cranky. I was cranky, and I remember turning to Pat and being like, I thought this was going to be more enjoyable. I thought the music industry was going to be more fun than this. And Pat looked at me and he was like, when you're 20, it is. He said, when you're 50, it's a drag. He's like, you're away from your
Yeah.
family, everything hurts. He's like, you don't want to be getting into the back of a van in your 50s or your 60s,
Yeah.
you know? He was like, by that time, if you haven't gotten to a level where you can travel in comfort, then you might as well do something.
But even that, I mean, even like, okay, you travel in comfort. You get on, anytime I've flown first class multiple times, I still get off the plane wanting to just, take a 4-hour nap, and I feel horrible, and maybe by the next day I start feeling okay.
Yeah.
But touring is, you're on that plane, 4 times a week. If you're even on a plane, if you're in a church, it depends on, if you're going first class, you're still moving, your body's still moving, and it's still taxing you.
It is, yeah.
And, my best friend and studio partner, Matt Wells, at One East in the city, he was like, his attitude was like, he goes, the worst thing about touring, he toured with, he was with the Stones for years and years and years. He's still really good friends with those guys, and it's worked for him for years. And he says, it's not so much the traveling, he says, it's the jet lag.
Yeah.
He says the jet lag will absolutely kill you. Especially if, even if you're in a van, it's the same principles. You're going, you're moving against time, and it wears the human body out. So it's not, I look at people like Ringo and I just go, why is he still touring? Why is he still doing this?
Yeah.
He's got enough, I think he's got enough money. Well, maybe not. Who knows,
Well, I actually got to work with Ringo at that same label that you guys were signed to. And actually, my first experience, actually, I guess it would have been my second experience seeing Levon play live, was with Ringo's All-Star Band, actually. But, Ringo, I could never figure out, I had the same questions, and I was vaguely working with the guy, like, why is he even doing this? Because, he was always very nice and very, for a man as brilliant, I consider him a brilliant drummer, and he was just so nice. He was much nicer than he had any reason to be. But you did kind of know when there was something that he didn't really want to do.
Yeah.
He would do it anyway, but you kind of knew, like he never said no to any requests, but I could see that, like, even at his level, there was definitely aspects of it that he just decided it's easier to just get on with this and get it done, I guess, than, and he would never be rude about it. That's what I always remember about you guys and Levon. I mean, I was working with so many pain-in-the-ass people at that point, and you guys were such a pleasure, and I wish we had more of a chance to work together even than we did, because that was the end of my label career. But I always remember...
To me, we were so thrilled with that, and we were so thrilled to be working with you. And I think after you left the project, you came on board and helped me with the radio promotion.
You guys hired me. Yeah, you were my first paying gig after leaving the label, and it was even more so than the financial side of it, which actually was very, very generous of you guys. But it was more just that was exactly the point where I needed to feel that there was still a future for me in some degree in the music industry, and you guys gave me that gift by hiring me independently. I'll never be able to thank you enough for that. Actually,
you knocked it out of the park there, because we were all over the radio, all over the country, and apparently all over Europe too. And what I had heard was that we were very big in Germany. Yeah, and I was like, what? Why? Okay, well, whatever. But we were like, Levon couldn't travel. He had been sick, and he was not into getting on airplanes and traveling. So we were not going to do any of that stuff. Either go to Europe and play there, or even we would play around. We'd play the Northeast with him, and we'd make it up to Boston or Philly, and play in New York a lot and stuff like that. But it was not the grind of it, probably because of our age. I was looking at it as a complete fluke. I was just like, this doesn't happen to guys in their mid-40s. They sign their first record deal. But this is what I worked for my whole life. Do you understand that I worked, and I had an older brother that I did everything I did was to get his approval, believe it or not. And he passed, but like the day he turned to me and he's just like, man, you got Levon Helms, your drummer. And I'm like,
That's awesome,
That's
man.
when I knew. It was like, that's when I knew within my brother, and that's how I gauged myself. Believe it or not, I know it's sibling weird stuff, but that's how I gauged myself. I was like, oh, I'm okay in my brother's eyes.
Oh, we all have
My
something
own
like
eyes,
that,
I was
man.
okay.
Yeah, we all
You know
have
what I mean?
some sort of approval we're seeking like that. But
Right.
you know, the fact that we're talking about like working with Levon, like it's some exalted thing, and it is. The man was a musical legend, but he was the most down to earth guy. And I know I've told you this story before, but when we went up to Sirius XM for you guys to do an interview up there. That was right around the time that they instituted the smoking ban in bars and restaurants in New York. And it was casual conversation in between whatever takes they were doing. And, you know, Levon had been sick. At that point, he really had no voice. His voice came back, but he didn't have it then. And somebody turned to Levon, and I think it was you. You turned to Levon. You were like, hey, man, what do you think of all this? And Levon turned and he looked at me and he said, oh, I don't know, man. I just don't want these motherfuckers telling me what to do. And then he winked at me. And it was like, he said, I don't know why, but he gave me that gift. He gave me that moment. And he always remembered my name. You know what I mean? Like, he had no reason to.
Levon was let's talk about him for a minute or two. He was first of all, the most brilliant musician I've ever met in my life.
I hear that. Yeah.
He taught me more about recording than anybody else I knew. He taught me more about singing, arranging, all that kind of stuff. I learned from Levon Helm. I mean, it was like going to school and having a teacher, having like an MIT professor as your teacher, because he knew stuff, and everybody that ever worked with him would say that he was just so phenomenal as just a natural ability. And then he went back to school. He went back to, after the band, he went back, I think he went to Berkeley in Boston.
Wow.
And took drumming classes and stuff. He's like, I want to learn how I should really do this.
Shit.
So he did all that kind of stuff. But he was also like the most he didn't know he was famous. He knew he was famous, but like he didn't know that people, like he had no access to the internet. I'm like, you've never been on the internet? He's like, no, sir, I haven't. I'm like, weird, that's going to change. So I brought computers to his house. I brought in the internet, and I plugged it in. I sat him down at a desk. I said, type your name in here into the browser. And he goes and does it, and all this stuff pops up. And he's like, what are all these people talking about? Why are they talking about me? And I'm like, dude, you are huge. You are super famous. I am? I'm like, yeah. Well, I think we can use this tool. This is a good tool. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a really good tool.
Well, I guess so.
This is at the beginning of the Midnight Rambles.
Right, I was just going to bring that up. Thank you.
After the Hombres folded in 03, he's like, I want to do a rockabilly band with you leading it, and I've got a bass player. And I'm like, okay, well, who's that? And he goes, a guy named Lee Rocker. And
oh, wow.
From the Stray Cats? He's like, yes. I'm like, I've heard of them. I said, okay, that sounds good. So I went up to rehearse, and so I get up there, and Lee Rocker's nowhere to be found. And me and Levon just spent the day playing music and hanging out, and he talked about the Midnight Rambles, what he wanted to do. He's like, I built this barn to have video shot here, to have film, to have live shows. And I'm like, well, he's like, I just never got it together. I'm like, well, okay, let's do that. He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, let's do it. It's a great idea. Let's go. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So I went and I called everybody I knew. I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, this is what we're doing. Midnight Rambles, Levon's barn. We need all the equipment. We need a recording studio. We need a film crew. We need everything. And we had 2 months to do it.
Really?
And we did it.
That's amazing.
It was amazing because this is the first time he sang again in public.
And we should rewind just a little bit though before going further with this part of the story, because I just want people to understand who don't already know. I imagine most people listening to this probably would though. You know, with the last Hombres, you guys had done very, very well at Americana Radio. And then you started working in this period on putting together what became The Ramble. And then Levon did another album after that became even bigger at Americana Radio. Like, he had a resurgence that all starts in this period with you, really.
Well, he was recovering. Like his voice, he could, like when I first met him, he could barely talk. Okay?
Right.
He'd talk like this. He'll be a whisper. He could whisper in your ear. And I'd be like, he'd be like, I can't sing. I'm like, I don't need you to sing. I want you to play the drums. And he couldn't, nobody was hiring him because he couldn't sing.
Right.
But to me, for Americana, there's no better drummer for that genre than Levon Helm.
He's absolutely one of the best drummers on the planet at that time. Yeah.
He came up, and I was just like, look, So as we would be playing a show, I'd hear a fourth harmony, and finally I look around and he's singing it.
Wow.
Without rehearsing, nothing like that. Just he would be all of a sudden. I'm like, "You want a mic?" And he'd be singing into his snare mic.
Right. Oh wow.
and it would sound. It was like, I was like, man. And I was like, "You want a microphone?" He said, "I'll let you know." I was like, "Okay." And then I would talk to him on the phone. I'd be like, "Your voice is clearing up." He goes, I am getting a little bit of my voice back, and I've been singing with Amy, his daughter Amy.
Right.
And his whole thing with the Rambles was he just wanted to do music with Amy.
Yeah.
That was the whole point of the Rambles, was so he could do music with his daughter. And, she's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, she's done very well for herself, on her own.
Her last record was stunning. It was so good.
Yeah.
But that was the motivation. It was just like, to pay, to figure out his finance situation, which was a mess. And to get him, so he didn't have to travel, so he could play at his house,
Right.
So, and then, okay, so for the first Ramble, his first song was Chuck Berry's School Days. And people did their jaws just dropped. He just nailed School Days. Up in the morning, off to school, and the place went nuts. And this was like an invite thing where people just came up to the barn for the first one. And it was unbelievable. I knew, like when I said let's do the Rambles, I knew he was going to be back. I knew, like I heard him singing. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a no-brainer. And it just, once the Rambles were going, and he just took off again. And, he's playing the Beacon and playing. He was touring again. He'd go to Jazz Fest, and they were doing really, really well. Great band, the Midnight Ramble band with Larry Campbell, Jimmy Vivino, Mike Merritt on bass. All these guys are just like monster players. He had the best band. I mean, just the best band at every position. Brian Mitchell on Hammond.
Larry Campbell in particular, we've gotten to, my wife and I, but my wife more so, are huge fans of Yorma and Hot Tuna. And Larry and Teresa, we've seen them a bunch of times as part of Hot Tuna. I mean, what a talented duo.
Yeah. Well, that Hot Tuna's drummer, Justin Gupp, was the sound guy for the Rambles. He was Levon's. He ran the sound for the Rambles. And then, I'd sit up in the crow's nest with him up at the top of the barn. He mixed all that music from the top of the barn, looking down.
Wow.
And I'd hang out with him up there, and all of a sudden he'd be like, this guy Brendan, who's out there stage managing stuff. He continued on after Levon, and he'd take over sound, and Justin would go play the drums. Be like, and Levon played. They'd all switch. They all played multiple instruments. It was the talent in that barn was just. Was staggering how good it was.
When I saw Levon with Ringo's band, that was the year Danko was in the band also. Dr. John, Joe Walsh, Nils Lofgren, Billy Preston, and Zach Starkey, and I think maybe even Jim Keltner. I'm not sure, but everybody in that band, everybody I just mentioned, has the ability to play at least one other instrument, if not two. And there were multiple points in the concert where they switched off, but nobody more than Levon. He was on mandolin, he was on drums, he was singing. Very flexible guy.
He told me a funny, Charles, quick Ringo, Joe Walsh story. Joe Walsh they played a prank on Ringo. Levon and Joe pretended to hate each other. And then Levon pulled a gun as a joke.
Yeah.
But this was like him and Joe Walsh were in on, and nobody else was.
Oh, shit.
So everybody thought that Joe Walsh and Levon hated each other. when it was just Joe Walsh's idea of a joke. And it's, these guys are,
That's
know,
insane.
And then there's so many other stories that, of the barn, and the time Keith went up to the barn, Levon had Scotty Moore,
Yeah.
DJ Fontana.
The Elvis guys, right.
Yeah, Stan Lynch, Penny's drummer, was producing this.
Wow.
Danko was there. And so they have half of Elvis's band and Levon, and they're all recording, right? All of a sudden, a limo comes down the driveway. Out pops Keith Richards.
Wow.
And he goes, "Hey, do you guys mind if I hang around?" And they were like, "Okay, Keith, come on in." So they recorded Keith for the whole day. And some of the stories that came out of that, like Scotty Moore asked Keith, he's like, "Keith," he goes, why are you still doing this? You got enough money. You can stop touring the world and playing music. And he goes, "That's easy for you to say, Scotty. Your singer's dead."
Wow, man. Holy shit. Would you say that the Ramble was an influence on what Daryl Hall ended up doing with his...
He copied the whole thing. He came up and went to a Ramble, or a couple of them, and went back and built the barn. And God bless him. And Phil Lesh did the same thing. Phil Lesh came out, played a Ramble, and went back and built Terrapin Crossroads out in San Rafael. So those guys saw the handwriting on the wall, because it was like, you don't got to travel.
Right.
Just walk out your door and you're at your stage. I'm sort of doing the same thing with the place up the street, obviously on a much smaller scale, where I have to travel across the street.
Right.
To go play. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So that, this was what the thinking was with Levon, was like, financially, and what it was then he built it up to the point where he could go, he could do these small tours and go, maybe play, 6 or 7 cities. He called me in 09. He's like, "Paulie, I need your help." I'm like, "Okay, Lee, what do you need?" He goes, "I need you to bodyguard Little Sammy." I'm like, "Little Sammy, the harmonica player?" He's like, "Yeah, I need you to drive him around on this next tour and keep an eye on him."
Holy shit.
I'm like, okay. So I'm like, all right. So I pick up, I go up he lived in Port Jarvis. I go pick him up, and we go, I forget how many cities, maybe 5 or 6 cities. And I got to hang out with Little Sammy, and I'm like, why? I never figured out up until we got into Boston. We played the Orpheum Theater in Boston. And the show finished, and it's kind of like down an alley, okay? Mm-hmm. And the crowd clears out, and it's a good 2 blocks to get out of the theater once you walk outside the theater. So I'm like, it's cleared out. Everybody's going to a bar, around from the corner of the hotel. So I'm like, okay, Sam, we can go now. I walk into the theater, and in the lobby is still packed. I'm like, uh-oh. People see Sammy, and they're like, "Sammy!"
Oh,
and I'm like,
shit.
uh-oh. And I'm like, I put my arm around Sammy, and I just start bull rushing him through the crowd.
Wow.
And stopping, and people want to take pictures and selfies. I'm like, yeah, okay, but we gotta go. And people were really, really cool, but he was swarmed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, I had no idea. I'm like, that's why he needed a bodyguard.
Yeah.
He was 80 years old,
Wow.
That was so much fun. And then we went to a bar, and it was just a blast, I had a lot of fun with those guys. And I'd come around once in a while. When they played the Beacon, I'd go in and see them. And, or wherever. I'd go up to the barn once in a while and catch a show, but I was doing my own thing in New York, so it was. Yeah. And I never worked with them again. And we could have worked together because I had the studio in the city. I could have worked with them anytime, and we would talk about it. We'd be like, "Hey, we want to do something," and we just never did it. He got busy. He got really busy, which I was really thrilled about.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that he did that last lap. Because when I met him, he was half dead when I met him. There was not much left of that guy, and except his drumming.
Right.
That guy could play the drums. So I was just like, you know what? I found myself in a weird position in life where I could have, like when he was talking about, like he told me after 3 years of playing with him how much trouble he was in financially. He's going to lose his house. The sheriff is coming. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to let that happen.
Here comes the wreckage. It's coming down the track, and it will not be turning back into the gentle night. Head for the exit. You've torn the curtain down, and he had lost the things he found. It's now your appetite. Pouring iodine upon these wounds won't make them heal. But you gotta do something about the way you feel. You've seen your devil. She wears a silver dress, and now her heart beats in your chest until the night is gone. You're disconnected. She's pulling out the wires as you're stomping out the fires as you imagine them. Pouring kerosene upon these flames just makes them grow. Till you realize the more you lose, the less you know. Head down for coverage. You look behind your back, and you can see into the past, but can't think straight ahead. Down comes the damage. You're seeing every face, and now you're falling down from grace into the wrecking pile. Here comes the wreckage. Here comes the wreckage. Here comes the wreckage.
Well, yeah,
Kind of like,
I remember there was some activity around, some legal activity around that period surrounding the last waltz. He was actually talking about it surprisingly openly at Sirius that day. I was surprised at how much he was letting me hear about that whole situation.
yeah, he was not, that obviously was like the whole band thing with Robbie and all that stuff. I mean, I was not there for all that, and there are bands. You've been in bands. You've
Yeah.
had. I'll speak for myself. I've had bands and had ups and downs with bandmates for years.
Me too, yeah.
I mean, Russ Seeger and I used to hate each other. Back in those days, we hated each other. We fell in love again later, but
Yeah.
we were always disagreeing about things. And it's just like that's what being in a band kind of is. You're married to four other guys, and they're smelly. You got to drive down the highway with him, and you're not in love with all of them all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So being in a band, you add that to the travel and everything else, it just becomes, a semi-nightmare at times.
Yeah.
So those guys had their, I know that, okay, one guy ends up with all the money and all the other guys are broke and die broke. There's something wrong.
Yeah, something weird.
There was something wrong there, and those guys didn't really know. They weren't business guys again. They're not business guys. And Robbie got up on the business guys.
Yeah.
He got with the business guys, and they told him how it runs and how it works. That's how, as much as I know about it, even though I've read I had all those contracts. I've read Levon's contract for the last waltz.
Wow.
It's about 3.5 inches thick.
Shit.
And as Levon says, it's like the first page tells you what you're going to get, and the rest of the pages tell you how they're going to take it back from you.
yeah, man. I can see that.
He's right, and they were, but he signed all the deals. He signed every contract that so you really didn't have a legal leg to stand on, but he felt he was robbed, and I think he was.
Yeah.
I think Albert Grossman definitely robbed those guys.
And a few other people, too.
He robbed everybody, That's another typical story in rock and roll. Everybody gets robbed.
Yeah.
If you're worth robbing,
right.
you get robbed.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, can I ask you for a minute? We haven't talked too much about what was it like working with Buddy Cage. We mentioned Michael Falzerano earlier from New Riders of the Purple Sage, but Buddy Cage predates him by quite a bit. And I've met him, I think, briefly once, but tell us a little bit about working with him.
Buddy was like, Buddy took, just in case people don't know him, Buddy took over the pedal steel seat from Garcia, and the story goes that the Riders were going to go out on tour, and the Dead had dates too, and they conflicted. So Garcia called Buddy and said, "The seat's yours." And Buddy was a really good pedal steel player.
Oh yeah.
So he was playing. Well, he's playing locally, I think in Oyster Bay somewhere, and Mike heard he was playing, and I was like, "Yeah, go down and see him." So we went down and saw him, and he ended up helping him out with his gear, into his van, and he's just talking to him. He's like, Buddy hands him his car, and he says, "Yeah, man, I'll play with you guys. We'll record whatever you want." So that's basically how we broke up with Buddy. That was Mike me and meeting him, and we offered him the slot, and then we did some gigs with him, and we recorded our first record. Thankfully, nobody heard because it was really bad. I mean, really bad. But like guitars out of tune bad, that bad. But we, it was a step, and we had Buddy on that record, and then when we did the one record with Levon, we had Buddy on some tracks. He played great, he really added such a dimension to it. And he got sick, and I hadn't seen him in a number of years, and he passed. He's gone a couple of years now.
Yeah.
It was like, he was just a dead family member. It's like, if you ever meet a dead anybody in the Dead, or they have a familiarity to them. You know what I mean? I guess seeing them all those years. I met Phil Lesh once backstage at Jones Beach. I was down to see Levon's band, Midnight Ramble Band was opening up for Phil and Friends. So I went down and hung out, and Phil came in. It was just like, just saying hello to Phil. What I found, like with Levon, was Phil is just a regular, they're just people.
Yeah.
And I met Keith Richards. I hung out with Keith Richards for an afternoon. Now that, I'm not sure, like, he was just like the sweetest old guy you ever want to meet. He's just like this total English gentleman.
Wow.
Very kind and very, I was expecting, the stories, the Keith Richards being mean to people stories.
Yeah.
And that's not what I meant.
Wow.
And Matt has known him for 40 years, and he says, "Nah, it's not like that at all. It's just, it becomes legend, becomes a story."
Yeah. Well, listen, man, you've given us some beautiful stories today, and we could keep going, but unfortunately the show is only an hour long.
I understand.
All right, brother, please take care of yourself. Thank you.
You too, my brother. I'll see you soon, all right?
Yeah, you got it, man. Take care.
You got it. Thank you.
Junction through an open door. Exit quickly, leave them wanting more. For the ones left here behind, waiting for some kind of sign. Gone directly beyond reckoning. Gone directly beyond reckoning. Saints preserve us, lead us on.